Michael, I just want to start with this. First off, how did you do this? It's always been my sort of political science perspective that the more times people are leaking, it's usually because they're anticipating a loss and they want to cover their own rear ends in history's mind. How did you get this kind of access to the White House and these inner workings in the final days?
Well, I was recently kind of crowing about what I had accomplished here with a friend, and the friend said, "Well, you've had a lot of practice." So this is the third book that I've done, and it really is an accumulation of knowledge and experience about this White House, of talking to the people around him, the waves of people. The people in the beginning were certainly not the people there at the end. Actually, most people were there only a matter of months. But I've really had this kind of constant conversation with the people around the president, which is in itself weird. Why would they be talking to me? And the real answer to that is that everyone who has had the Trump experience of being close to this man has to talk about it. It's so weird. It's so unusual. It's so frightening that people want to talk. They want to describe it.
I have to say that the trilogy, your books, provide honestly one of the best interpretations and images of the Trump administration, not just because of the crazy stories that you tell, but because they all come from people talking about their experiences. I imagine that part of your writing was sitting on a couch as people laid there and just told you their stories like you were their therapist. In the final days, heading towards the end of this campaign, was there a realization that Donald Trump was likely to lose, or did they think that by COVID and jamming up the mail system and all sorts of pressure and intimidation, was there anybody in the White House who still believed he was going to pull this off heading into November?
Everybody felt that this was one of the most disastrous campaigns ever run by certainly by a sitting president. Remember, they went into the last weeks of the campaign being outspent 3-1 by their opponent. That has never happened. Having said that, everybody around Donald Trump still feels that there is something inexplicable about the guy, magical about the guy. How did he win the first time? How has he survived so long? Through catastrophe after catastrophe after catastrophe, Donald Trump is still standing. So they go into November 3rd thinking, yeah, maybe, who knows? And remember how close he got to winning.
Right. So looking at this, we're now past the Trump era in a way. He's not officially in office. Based on what you've learned from this book and your previous books, what do you think the future of Trump and his family, this sort of junta that they've created, what is it going to be? Do you think he's going to make a serious run at 2044? Does he just want to be a power broker going forward? What do you think the future holds after writing this book?
You see, that's the Trump fallacy. The fallacy is to think that he has a plan. That there is some long-term strategy here. There isn't. Whatever happens will happen in the moment. He'll be at a rally 2 years from now, and he'll sense the crowd. He can get a response from the crowd by saying he's running, and that will be when the decision is made. Not that decision will stay that decision either. He is as likely to reverse it. So again, it is all in the moment. It is all, he contains all of reality for himself. There's really almost no outside stimulus here. It's just
whatever's in his head,
what he feels exactly.
It's a dog chasing cars, and he'll have no idea what to do if he actually gets one.